Welcome to Love Books. It's absolutely wonderful to have so many of you here tonight to celebrate the launch of this book, Jane's new book, her 7th in the Jane's Delicious Organic Gardening series. And of course, it is Jane's Delicious Natural Solutions for Pests and Diseases. Since Jane published her first book, which was Jane's Delicious Garden back in 2009, which, Jane, by the way, is also the year that Love Books opened. So we're both 16 years old, yeah. She's pretty much changed the landscape of veggie gardening in South Africa. She's had such an influence on us all. I think the book opened up a world of organic gardening to so many people. She introduced us to no-dig gardening, to Jane's jungle style, to companion planting and a host of other things that really weren't that mainstream at the time. And I'm sure most of you here, I certainly have, got a copy of Jane's Delicious Garden on my shelf at home, signed by you. Jane is a pioneer, she's a barn breaker, and she's always manages to find something new to write about. So I'm sure there will be many, many books to come, all destined to become garden Bibles. So congratulations, Jane. It's always really lovely to have you here at Love Books over the years, and thanks for everything that you've done. When she's not gardening, Jane is a television producer, a writer, an artist, a cook, and a traveller. But she's been growing and eating organic food for more than 30 years. Chatting to Jane this evening, and she's right behind me here, it's really lovely to have the indomitable Jenny Crwys-Williams here tonight. She barely needs an introduction. She is a legendary broadcaster, a journalist, and a relentless promoter of books over the years. It's always absolutely lovely to have you here, Jen. Thank you so much, and I'll hand over to the two of you.
For one moment, I thought she was going to walk away with the microphone. And Kate was my producer at 702 for, God, Kate, I can't remember how many years. But she started off by doing the whole show, and then we were just overwhelmed with books, and then she just concentrated on books. And unbeknown to me, in the background, she was quietly thinking about opening a bookshop. So when she finally resigned, with relief, I think, there was this bookshop, and it has just taken Joburg by the throat and in the heart. So, who doesn't love books, honestly and truly? It's the most wonderful place to come, and there's good coffee next door. So it's very special. And I don't need to introduce you, because I think, I might be wrong, but have I done every single one of your books?
I think, except for the very first one, you've done every single other book. You've introduced and you've watched me grow from coming onto the gardening scene where nobody had any idea who I was. I'd never written anything before my first book came out. And yes, you have. And you've also witnessed the fact that almost every single launch of mine, it rains.
Well, I do remember the last one, which was out in the Magaliesberg somewhere.
It was out at
Casalinga.
Yes, and it poured.
And it was the middle of summer, and we woke up to this dark, grey, angry sky, and I thought the event was going to be cancelled, but it wasn't. And we sat and froze. Everybody froze, and the wind was coming sideways. The rain was coming sideways.
We had to use brooms to push the water off the roof. Keith was running around with brooms,
yes.
and these great cascades of water were pouring off the roof.
Well, listen, I mean, I've checked the roof and everything
We're
is
good
fine
to go.
above
Great.
all of us.
And we're all gardeners, so none of us are complaining about rain.
Well, some of us are wannabe gardeners.
Okay.
But what gave you the idea for this? I mean, it's a natural extension, but what gave you the idea for this in the first place?
Well, it wasn't my idea. I thought Kate says, there are lots more books coming. Every single book I write, I think, okay, that's it, done and dusted. I'm not writing anymore. I'm finished. I've said everything there is to say. And my publishers came to me in May or June of 2023, and they wanted me to do a book on pests. And I went, that's interesting. That would be an interesting book. I thought about it, and we had a meeting, and I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll do a book on pests, but it can't be just on pests. It has to be diseases as well, because they go hand in hand. many pests result in diseases, and also the preventions and solutions for both of them are very similar, especially the preventions and the prevention methods applies to both pests and diseases. And I said I will only do it if I can do it obviously for edible gardening and 100% organic solutions and natural solutions. And they said, absolutely, it's a go. So that's where it began.
But did you have any idea of the length and the breadth and the width of this?
I asked myself that if I knew at the beginning how difficult this book was going to be and how challenging and all-consuming, would I have taken it on? And the answer is probably yes, because I do like a challenge. But no, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was letting myself in for. It snowballed. It actually snowballed uphill, because by the end we were calling it the Sisyphean book. Because every single time we thought, oh, okay, now we've got it. And then suddenly it'll be, oh no, this has happened. Or, oh, we've got to do this. Or, oh, this has changed. Or, oh, this doesn't work now. And we'd have to start and redo something. It was a beast of a book to research and write, but incredible fun and incredibly rewarding as well.
Sorry, I'm just going to record a little bit.
There we go.
It works well. So I think organic gardening has grown almost unchecked. And I think it is completely wonderful. I think that we know virtually nothing about what goes on in the soil underneath us. I mean, there was one of your comments in the early stages of the book about healthy soils has got more beneficial organisms. 1 tablespoon of healthy soil has more beneficial organisms than there are people on our planet. Is that true?
100% true.
So,
Yes.
I mean, they're very little.
Don't forget, absolutely, they're microscopic. We have more microbes on us than we have actual human cells. We're actually made up of more microbes than our actual bodies. And it's the same thing for the soil, it's the same thing. They're everywhere, they are all over. And the soil is one of those, we know more about space than we do, and there's more money that goes into researching what's out on Mars and wherever else than is going into researching what's literally under our feet. It's one of the last great frontiers. It's changing. There are a lot of soil scientists now who are focusing on our soil, and the attitude to soil is changing, particularly in terms of agriculture. There's been quite a shift starting to happen where people are starting to understand that literally soil gives us life. Without the soil and without those organisms, we wouldn't survive. It provides our food, it provides our the air we breathe, everything. We would not survive without it. They're the cleaners. If we didn't have those microbes, anything dead would just lie there, and another dead thing would land on top of it until we'd just be surrounded by dead things instead of them decomposing. They're vital, and we don't value them enough.
So I don't know whether anybody in this room actually follows him, a guy called James Rebanks, Rebanks, and he's on the internet, and he's Hurdy Shepherd, and he calls himself a shepherd, and he is, I suppose, but he's got a degree in literature from Oxford as well, so he's a writer, and he's got this wonderful sheep farm. No, not a sheep farm. He's got this wonderful farm, and in the Yorkshire Dales, and he switched to organic, and he took photographs when he started it, and photographs now today, and the cattle that he's introduced, which include very, very old varieties of Old English sheep, and the most beautiful, beautiful cattle, which are not meant for slaughter. It's meant for milk and whatever. But his whole place now, the grass is growing like that, and the cattle are let in, and they eat there, and then they go to another field.
And then
there's
they
water running.
it.
The water is crystal clear. The difference between what was and what is absolutely phenomenal. And I do wish people could go and see what he's doing And his photography, by the way, is absolutely wonderful. So it's Hurdy Shepherd. And
Hurdy
go there,
Shepherd.
and you honestly and truly, you'll be entranced by what he does. So I can see what happens, but I can't see underneath the soil. And I don't think that many people, other than you guys, know that plants talk to each other. I mean, they can talk anyway, but underneath the soil. Now,
Not
talk
just
to us
under the
about
sea,
those
not
filaments.
just underneath the soil.
Yes.
This is another area that there has been astonishing progress being made with modern technology and modern tools of being able to analyze and look inside things microscopically and even smaller. Plants communicate. In the morning when the birds sing, they start before the sun comes up. The plants, before the sun comes up, they hear the birds and they open their stomata, which is their breathing holes. So when the sun comes up and lands on their leaves, they're ready to begin photosynthesizing. And scientists have proved, by putting them in a dark box and playing birdsong to them, that they do this because they hear the birds, not because the sun is coming up. Plants also, they emit compounds. We know it if you walk into your garden and you break off a little bit of rosemary, you can smell that. That's what's known as a volatile organic compound, a VOC, but basically it's a smelly thing that goes out into the air. The rosemary we can smell, but there are loads of others that plants are putting out. Let's not forget, plants are stuck in one place. So they have developed the most incredible array of protection and defense mechanisms because they can't run away. They're rooted, literally. So they give off these signals. They give off these compounds which we can't smell, but the insects can smell them. The other plants can smell them. They pick them up. So, for example, if a maize plant is being eaten by a caterpillar, the maize will put out this SOS. It's literally an SOS signal going out into the air. And first of all, it'll be one leaf that's being eaten, and the rest of the maize plant will then pick up that signal, and it'll start turning its leaves to taste horrible. It puts out a substance into its leaves to stop the caterpillar eating it. The other maize plants in the block will also start changing their leaves because they pick up. But what is really fascinating is that there are insects out flying around, waiting to pick up these signals, and they hear this SOS, SOS, SOS. Parasitic wasps love nothing more than a caterpillar. That's what they're looking for because they are wanting to go and lay their eggs inside the caterpillar. So when they hear the maize sending out the signal saying SOS, 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 they go, oh, goody, caterpillar. And they land on the caterpillar and they start parasitizing it. Now, if you've got beans planted next to your maize, which is a really old traditional planting technique called the Three Sisters that dates back thousands of years in the Americas, the beans also pick up the signal. They then start putting more sugars out into they've got little glands under their leaves that secrete sugars. That then attracts more wasps, both parasitic ones and predatory ones, that come along and eat the caterpillars. And those wasps now eat that nectar and they live for longer, so they kill more caterpillars. There's this incredible communication that goes on that scientists are discovering these things. They have known that the Three Sisters, for thousands of years, they've known that it's a good combination of planting. But now they're knowing even more why. But to go back to your question as well, the underground, because underneath the ground, plants also communicate. When they first stuck their heads out, when they were in the water and they weren't plants yet, they stuck their heads out of the water and looked at all the land and went, wow, look at all that space. Let's go and grow there. And so they clambered out onto the soil and they started growing, but they were a bit pathetic about it because they didn't have great roots yet because, they've been in the water. But there were fungi on the land. And the fungi had been there for a while, so they knew about living on the land and they knew what to do and how to deal with land. And so the fungi and the plants struck up a deal, and the plants, the little roots that they connected to the fungi, and suddenly they had root extensions that they could supply the plant with more food and more water than if they didn't have this relationship with the fungi. The fungi benefited because they didn't photosynthesize and the plants photosynthesize. So it was a win-win for both of them. And that relationship still continues in our soil today. Mycorrhizal fungi is an integral part of healthy soil.
So I mean, this fungi underneath the ground, it can stretch for kilometers.
Kilometers.
It's not just
in healthy soil that hasn't been cultivated. Yes.
So I mean, I think it is the most wondrous thing. I really and truly do. And also, I love the idea that giraffes, once they start chowing something down there, and they get signals,
Yes.
That
a giraffe is eating it.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And so the leaves turn around.
They put more tannins into the leaves.
And
yes.
so,
They also, plants and insects they've been having this yin-yang war with pests and plants for millennia. And it's an ongoing fight, one for dominance and one winning, one losing. And the result is this incredible balance, this equilibrium where there's never, one time one is up and the other time another is up, but it's always there's this balance that keeps on being maintained. So, for example, citrus, there's a citrus swallowtail butterfly. They're very beautiful. You can see them dancing around your garden, and they'll be looking for a citrus tree to go and lay a little single egg on. And out hatches a little caterpillar. And the first little instars, the first stages of the insect look just like little caterpillar poos. They're very clever. They just hide themselves and camouflage themselves. But when those caterpillars start eating the citrus tree, first of all, the citrus tree doesn't do anything about it. It leaves the caterpillars and lets them eat a bit because it's a big citrus tree and it's got enough leaves for it to eat. It's not going to kill it. But then once the caterpillars start breeding and more start coming along, only then do they start at the site where they breed, they start changing their leaves so that the caterpillars can't eat. But that gives them enough time for the caterpillars to metamorphose and into a butterfly, which is a precious pollinating butterfly. It's these wonderful cycles and relationships and beneficial and also, this yin-yang of helping each other or benefiting each other that as gardeners we can benefit from hugely the more we understand about these relationships and the more we understand about these plants and the insects and their forms of communication.
So you've recently redone your garden, and I've looked at those winding paths, and they're very narrow. So plants from one side can talk to plants on the other side. But I want to know whether you talk to your plants.
Oh yes, always.
And is it thoughts or is it verbal?
I verbally talk to my plants sometimes, but what I do is I listen to my plants. I'll look at them. It's so much of gardening is about observation. It's looking to see what's going on. And so much of pest and disease control is about observing. Walk in your garden every day. Get to know what is happening there. I know, for example, that if I go out and there's a cabbage leaf that is just starting to do that, just starting to curl over, I know that if I uncurl that cabbage leaf, voila, there are going to be aphids underneath there. Because the only thing that will cause that cabbage leaf to curl over are those little aphids. And the sooner you get onto them, the quicker you deal with it, then the lesser chance of it becoming a major problem. I planted it's a ginger family plant that needs shade. But I took an apple tree down and suddenly it doesn't have the shade anymore. And I looked at it the other day and I realized, this thing is getting completely sunburned. I'm going to have to move it. because it doesn't like that hot weather. Your plants will talk to you in the form that you need to observe and listen to what they're telling you.
Let's talk about no-dig gardens. I mean, I can remember my parents were great gardeners, and I can remember soil being turned over in the vegetable garden, in the flower garden, in the mixed garden, and it was and everybody just loved it. It was a sign of good gardening. Now, you just don't do that. But lots of people don't know about that.
No, exactly. And it's a tradition, particularly in South Africa, where we have gardeners, is, if you change of season, get in there, dig, turn over the soil, dig, turn it all up, dig it all over. It's detrimental to the soil for many reasons. And the first and foremost, in terms of pests and diseases, it's destroying all those beneficial organisms and their homes, their structures. Some of them don't like air, so they live way down at the bottom where there isn't air. You come along, dig it up, and you give them oxygen, they die. Those networks, the fungal networks, once they're broken, it's going to take quite a while for them to reconnect. And emulating nature doesn't come along, with little pixies at night to come and dig up the garden when you're not looking. Everything naturally decomposes. All the decomposers that I was talking about, they come up at night, particularly or daytime, whenever, earthworms come up at night, and they will turn leaves that have fallen from trees naturally land on the soil, and the beneficial organisms, the rain, the heat, the sun, everything breaks it down and incorporates it naturally back into the soil. And this then provides nutrients. It's an entire cycle that you're feeding. Part of the no-dig gardening and building soil also is about feeding the soil instead of feeding plants. Fertilizer and feeding plants incorrectly can cause problems and cause pests. It can cause diseases. Again, it's that balance. You're aiming for that balance. You're aiming for balanced feeding where you feed the soil and the organic fertilizer, or you can make your own fertilizers. You can use plants like comfrey and yarrow and things like that. You're feeding the soil with those. They're breaking down, and the plants are getting the steady growth instead of having a spurt of growth, which all that does is attract pests. They'll see in the leaves, they will see those amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. And plants are designed to only hold a certain amount in their leaves for growth, for optimum, just steady growth. And if you feed a very nitrogen-rich or immediately with the chemical fertilizer that will be absorbed by the plants quickly, they have no choice because it's in the water, so they have to absorb it. Next thing, their leaves are full of these amino acids. And there the aphids are, and they come along, the whitefly, everything else coming, oh, goody. And you've got a pest infestation.
So the whole thing about no-dig gardening is that you pull out weeds, if you want to, and you lay them on the surface, and the sun does the rest, and it just becomes part and parcel of. But, I mean, I think that there are other wonderful stories about, you're talking about worms and compost heaps. And I used to be very fortunate, and I was able to help take people around the Oppenheimer garden, Brenthurst Gardens. And there were always compost heaps in a specific place. And Strilly Oppenheimer, who is just wonderful with plants and everything, she tells the story of when one compost heap has been chowed by enough worms, the worms actually move house. And they hump themselves up. I've not seen it, but I think she tells the truth. And that the worms hump themselves up and they move over to where the beginning of the next compost heap is. And they keep moving backwards and forwards, almost with the seasons. And they are very fat worms, apparently.
And also, earthworms not only leave the soil far richer once they've ingested it and then popped out their earthworm poo, something like 8 times richer, so they're increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that soil that is rich in earthworms have far fewer diseases, so they actually control pathogens as well. And this is the thing as well about having healthy soil, because no-dig gardening leads to healthy soil that is full of all of these ones that we can see, like the earthworms, and the ones that we can't see, like the fungi and the microscopic bacteria. And the good ones outcompete the bad ones, first of all, for food, for space, for nutrients, for water. Excuse me. They also, you have, and this is a whole new world of pest and disease control, is biocontrols, where you're using living organisms to control pests and diseases and prevent pests and diseases. So you can have ones that are microorganisms, the ones you can't see. So these are those bacteria that are on the soil, and they actually attack. Some, they attack pathogenic fungi, pathogenic bacteria. Others actually attack insects. They'll attack and parasitize insects. And some of these are very, very, that we've known about them for a long time. One of the more common ones, BT for short, Bacillus thuringiensis, was discovered when late 1880s, 90s, round about then. They discovered that there was this bacteria that was killing silkworms. And of course, silk was a huge industry then. So it was not a good thing. It was that all the silkworms were being chowed by this or parasitized by this bacteria. It was also the first time that they realized that a caterpillar could be parasitized by a bacteria. And that led to the development of one of the very first micro biocontrols. BT by the 1930s was being developed by French companies as a pesticide, as a commercial pesticide that farmers, everybody could use. And unfortunately, at the beginning of the last century, there also happened to be 2 world wars, which saw a lot of changes happening. And a lot of the results led to the growth of the massive agribusiness, because don't forget, there were both world wars. There was chemical warfare. How were those gases, those toxins that were designed to maim and kill human beings? They were tested on insects. So when at the end of the Second World War, it took just a little bit of tweaking, and those same poisons that were busy killing and maiming people in the First and Second World War, particularly the first, were just tweaked and redesigned, rejigged to become pesticides and fungicides and herbicides. And the same thing with chemical fertilizers. There were the things that had been used for bombs to kill people, the same nitrates that were used for those bombs, they were left with all these nitrates after the war. They quickly reversioned those into fertilizer factories to feed people. And that led to the growth of this huge agribusiness. So the development of these biocontrols took a backseat, and agribusiness dominated, particularly in agriculture. And unfortunately, home gardening also follows. It often, follows in the footsteps. However, there has been a huge change happening in the last couple of decades. Consumers particularly are pushing for it, and farmers are realizing that their methods are not working, that their methods are destroying the soil, our soil that gives us life. We've lost, I think it's something like 30% of our arable soil in just the last 40 to 50 years through destructive farming techniques, through using these techniques that destroy that balance, destroy all the organisms. But luckily now there is this shift, and these are the solutions that I've included in here, and they are fascinating. Everything from the ones that you can't see, the bacteria and the fungi that attack caterpillars, to ladybirds and releasing tiny, tiny little parasitic wasps that parasitize aphids. Each one will come along, and it's very cute because it's tiny. It's tinier than a mosquito. It comes along and sees the aphid, and it goes, okay, I'm going to lay an egg in that little aphid, but it doesn't know if maybe another wasp got there first. So it has this method of drumming on the aphid to see if it's got an egg in it or not. It can tell by knocking on the aphid. And if it hasn't got an egg in it, then boom, it pops an egg in. And, once you've got a population of these in your garden and you keep them happy by providing them with all the things that they need, you won't have an aphid problem. And also ladybirds, you can release ladybirds. And all of these solutions, there are loads of solutions that are now becoming available to us as gardeners. And farmers are starting to buy into these as well. Farmers are realizing, I did a talk in Kokstad in 2013, and I did a talk on no-dig gardening. I was quite nervous because there were all these khaki-clad farmers in the audience. And I thought, who the hell do I think I am? I'm telling farmers how to grow food, And my crop fails, I can just go down the road to Impala and buy some, and I thought, okay, Jane, just put on your big girl panties and do the talk. Anyway, afterwards, there was quite a few farmers who came up and they wanted to know a bit more about it because they were interested. They were maize farmers for the most part, and they were big commercial farmers. So they were asking me, how can they do what I'm doing in my little garden here in Auckland Park on their big farms in Kokstad? So I put them in touch with Talborn Organics, who are leaders in organic fertilizer and gardening, especially in agriculture. And they then helped these guys start turning a section of their farm over to no-till agriculture. And about 3 years later, I went back and I did another talk. And at the end, same thing, all these khaki-clad farmers in the audience. And at the end of it, one of the farmers came up to me and he said, I just want to shake your hand. And he put the big beefy hand and he shook my hand. They had just come out of a 2-year drought. And of course, talking of raining, always with my book launches, I did a talk and it was outdoors and all these clouds were coming over and I was saying, what are we going to do if it rains? And I said, it's not going to rain. That's what happens every single day. The clouds all come and then they just blow away. I started talking 15 minutes into the talk. It poured with rain and we all had to pick up our chairs and run into the barn, and I finished my talk in the barn. But anyway, there had been a drought for 2 years. And this guy came up to me and he said he had converted a quarter of his farm at that stage to no-till. The fields that were no-till, the maize was this high, healthy, green, thriving. The conventional was that high and looking really sad. And he was in the process of converting his entire farm into no-till gardening, using organic fertilizers, using organic methods of controlling pests. There is a change happening. I see it so much, not just in home gardens, but with big agriculture. And we as the consumers and we as the gardeners, I think, have made a big push because we've made our voices heard that we do not want these toxic chemicals anymore. It's affecting not just our soil, it affects us as well, our health.
Jane, talk to us a little bit about biostimulants, because this was quite new to me. Or maybe just the word biostimulant.
It might have been just the word bio, because you have. If you've seen Strini's compost heap, that's a biostimulant. A biostimulant is anything, it means something that stimulates life. So and this is a way of feeding the soil but encouraging beneficial organisms, encouraging soil life, not necessarily fertilizing the soil, although a lot of these components do fertilize the soil. So these range from effective microorganisms, which is a liquid that you add to the soil, and it's got bacteria in it, fungi in it. If any of you, it's got a lot of the same bacteria that we use to make yogurt. And the reason yogurt doesn't go off is because of these. It helps preserve it. The same thing in the soil. It stops the pathogenic fungi coming in with the same methods within the soil. I'm trying to think. Biochar is another one. These are all things that help soil structure and help create healthy soil that encourages a population of healthy, beneficial organisms.
So I'm looking at some of the notes I was making. I mean, I just stick sticky things on it. Sanitize your secateurs with alcohol spray.
Oh, well, we all know about
Well,
alcohol
I don't.
spray these days. No, but I mean, after COVID, we all have alcohol sprays. So, this is the thing about pests and diseases, particularly diseases. They move, and they can move very quickly. If you've got a fungal disease on a plant, and you're busy pruning it, and you chop, and you've got a grapevine, for example, that has got a powdery mildew, and then on the other side of your garden, you've got a grapevine that doesn't have powdery mildew, and you use the same secateurs, you will transfer it. This is something that's not just, good sanitation. It's not just putting alcohol spray on our secateurs. Good sanitation involves things like if you've got a fruit tree and your fruit tree is dropping fruit, pick up the fruit that's on the floor. Don't just leave it lying there, because by lying on the floor, it's going to attract pests to come to it. There's if you've got a diseased plant, don't throw it in the compost heap. Those spores will survive. If you've got a diseased plant in the soil, or even if it's not diseased, but removing plant debris as well can really help, depending on the plants. Again, this things like a cabbage, for example. If you leave cabbage roots in the soil, there's a disease called club root. It's not as prevalent in Gauteng, but it in areas where it is prevalent, if you leave the roots in the soil, it will attract this disease. So learning about that as well is also a very important way of preventing diseases and preventing the spread of diseases. And even on a bigger scale, I'm not going to ask with a show of hands how many of you, when you go traveling, bring back a slip in your toiletry bag. Okay, I can tell.
Or your shoe.
Or your shoe.
I've done
or, that. We all do it, eh? We all do it. And seeds, you go somewhere and you go, oh my goodness, look at these seeds. I want to grow that. Let me take it home. Biosecurity also applies to these. And there are pests and diseases that have been brought into this country and spread throughout the country simply because somebody brought in some seeds and somebody brought in a plant, or inadvertently sometimes, with air travel. Air travel, what happens is that these things come in, but they don't bring their enemies with them. They don't bring their natural enemies. They leave them behind. So they arrive here. Shottle borer, it's a perfect example. That affects all that, but the same thing, and it affects, they're very similar pests and diseases that have come into the country, and there are imminent ones as well. There are some that are on the continent that haven't actually arrived here, but there are biosecurity measures in place, especially for citrus trees, to try and prevent these coming in and then affecting our citrus industry.
Let's talk just a little bit. I mean, I want to talk a bit about solarizing, but before we get there, what was the most difficult part of this book? Because, I mean, it is a big book. What was it simply, I mean, you had to examine every single thing that you put in this book.
Yeah.
Because it is, from berries, from blueberries to Cape gooseberries to strawberries, pests for them, etc., etc. The amount of work that has gone in here, the amount of research is honestly and truly, it is almost overwhelming. So what was the toughest part of this book?
There were a number of things. Each stage brought a new challenge that was tough. One of the first things that I encountered as far as, okay, how on earth am I going to do this? You're working on your own as well in the beginning. The first draft, the first 70,000 words. I don't work with an editor on that. I don't work with anybody on that. It's me on my own with these words and with the research. And working out how am I going to take all this information and how am I going to make it useful and how am I going to make the book useful? How am I going to have, what is the architecture of the book going to be like? So all of those you work with from the very beginning. You're thinking of that in mind. You're thinking of, I have my reader in mind all the time. It's like, will this confuse a reader? Will this make sense for a reader? So plant names. Not plant names, pest and disease names. I don't know how many diseases there are called black spot. I mean, every single industry, they all know, the citrus growers, they know that their black spot affects lemons. That's fine. They all refer, because everybody's in this little, silo. They're all in their little bubbles. All the citrus farmers, they all talk to each other about citrus. They don't know anything else. The same thing with the macadamia farmers, the same thing with the grain farmers. They're all isolated in their field. I come along, I want to write about all of it. I want to know everything, because we as home gardeners, we have a bit of citrus, we have a bit of grain, we have some beans, we have tomato, we have a big mishmash of everything. So what are the diseases that affect that everything? And they're all called black spot. So first of all, I made a decision very early on that I was going to use the scientific names, because black spot of the citrus, there's black spot of papayas, there's black spot of pineapples, there's black spot of avos. Everything's got black spot. But then I started running into problems with the scientific names, because you get to a scientific name and I do all my research and I go, okay, great, I've got this one down. This is what it's about. This is it. These are the solutions. Da, 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 da. Then I come across something that looks, sounds, acts almost identical to the one that's got some other name. And the bloody thing has gone and changed its name. In 2014 or 2018 or 2016. So now I've got to try and work out which is the newest name. And they have different variants of a name depending on which sexual stage of the plant it is as well. That's also completely confusing. So what I thought was going to be a clever little decision, I'm going to use just scientific names. I just opened up this morass. And then what happens as well is that the farmers, because they're used to using, often the scientific name results in a common name. So, for example, there is an apple, a disease of apples, and it's called apple fusi. And I couldn't figure out, why is this called fusi? Because its Latin name was venturia, or venturium, or something like that. Can't keep all those names in my head. But why is it called fusi? Eventually I discovered that years ago it belonged to another genus altogether called fusi something or other. So all the apple farmers still refer to it as fusi. They all know it, but it took me a whole lot of research and unpicking and wading through stuff to figure out, fusi is that because it was called that, but now it's that. And the pests do the same thing. There's quite a virulent pest that attacks tomatoes. It's a leaf miner. And it has it had the absolutely fantastic name of Tuta absoluta. I mean, what a great name. It sounds like a vodka with a kick, not a pest that's attacking our tomatoes. And everybody remembers it, Tuta absoluta, But then it changed its name. So now everyone still calls it Tuta. But so that was, I tell you, that was a nightmare, because getting all of those down. And then also, finding the information, tracking down. I've spoken to so many plant pathologists, entomologists, and they are specialists in their field. They've spent years studying, researching, doing their little bug or their little disease, big whatever it is, and they've devoted a large portion of their lives to it. And I come along and I go, I want to know about your insect, your bug. Oh boy, are they so willing to talk to me. And I'm interested, because it's fascinating, because here's a person who's really focused on this one thing and they know all about it. So I'm on the phone for like 3 hours talking to them about this. And then I come out sort of backwards out of the bush, sort of, okay. And then I have to condense it all down to 5 lines and make it useful for my reader. That was probably those aspects. Eventually, finding the information and finding. I'll give you another example. The internet can be a very dangerous place. The World Wide Web. It's the world wildfire, and bad news spreads faster. So there's a pest called Colorado potato beetle. And it's very common on the internet. It's all over because it's a very common pest in the United States. And, let's face it, everything on the web is mostly a lot of American stuff. So now I had to decipher, is this here in South Africa? Is this pest a South African pest? Do I have to include it in the list of all the things I've included? This was part of the early stages. And I found a website that said, and I put in the search parameters for looking only in South Africa, and I found quite a lot. There's quite a lot of entries, and that's always a good sign that, okay, this probably is here. And then I see that BioGrow, which is a well-respected company, organic solutions, and they on their thing says BioGrow can be used for Colorado potato beetle. So I added to my list, I add a little brief thing on it and plan to come back to it. About 2 months later, I was reading a book by Jenny Crwys-Williams, who is a very, very well-renowned entomologist, South African entomologist. And he's talking about cucurbit beetles. And he says, the cucurbit beetles can look very similar to Colorado beetles. However, the Colorado beetle is not present in South Africa. And I go, whoa, okay. And I reverse. I go back to the website where I found the information. And I realized that the information on that, it looks like a great website, but it's one of those aggregators. It's just scraping the internet and slapping it on. And the irony is that loads of other websites just copied that information off her website and just put it onto theirs. And a lot of them are the people who are selling these products on their sites, and there are all these weed growers, all these marijuana sites where people are promoting products for marijuana growers. They're all telling them, okay, we've got the product for Colorado beetle. Okay, go, dudes, you can keep your Colorado beetle. So I just crossed Colorado beetle off. But it was those kind of things. It was so easy to trip up and find something that was wrong, and to source that information.
So along with all sorts of, wonderful information, cure-alls, myths, and conceptions, not conceptions, misconceptions. My God,
sounds like a drag name.
Well, yes, exactly. But if you look at this, there are just about everything in the book is natural in terms of curing,
everything
in terms
is.
of
Yes.
trying to get rid of aphids and having lots and lots of little nests all over your garden, so little bugs can crawl into them and come out, and don't chow the roses and things like that. I mean, it's a wonderland actually, and it's confusing, but once you get used to it, it's different. And I love the remedies, but do they last? I mean, some of them you can have for 24 hours and then they go off.
It all depends on the remedy. It all depends on the solution. But yes, very often an organic solution, it's not something, people have got very used to the chemical solutions where you actually pour it into the soil and then the poor plant absorbs it, and then, so you'd use it once and then you don't have to use it again. Most of the organic solutions you do have to use more regularly. But having said that, the one of the big messages in this book, and one of the very first steps, is prevention. Preventing problems happening in the first place, so you don't have to use any of the solutions. And there are so many ways of doing that I've itemized in the book and explored, and also, as you say, the myths and misconceptions, gone and researched and found out which ones actually work, which ones don't work, which ones are just internet myths, and which ones do make sense, and these things are all changing as well. In 10 years' time, some of these solutions, they might have discovered, oh dear, these aren't working anymore, or it's got another problem. Things evolve, things change. So we have to keep honing our information.
Well, we've got you. So we've got time for a couple of questions, but not specifics. So if you've got something growing on your rose, I don't think you want to.
Well, definitely not a rose, because roses aren't in the book.
Well,
edibles.
no. Well, let's just say a South African
Yes.
dahlia or something.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
A carrot.
Carrot. Okay. South African carrot. But don't make it specific. But if you've got some, a question you'd like to ask, and of course, when you get your book signed, you can
look up
you
your
can have
pest.
a little word as well. Yes. Any questions? Yeah.
I can just project my voice.
Yes.
Not an organic gardener. One of my issues is always the total overwhelmingness of information, right? Like, don't leave the cabbage, but leave the other leaves. It's like so much. So if you say one thing, maybe that you would say you would start with, what would be the one thing that you would recommend everyone, as a first step into this?
Walk in your garden every morning. Walk in your garden every morning. What I recommend to people is to get to know their own gardens. You can absorb all this information, you can read all this information, but the best way to have that information stick in your head and become second nature is to start using it in your own garden and understanding it in your own garden. Only once you've actually, and there's a wealth of information in this book, but you'll probably only need about, a lot of things in here are only for KZN because they're for hot climates. So you get to know what your problems are, get to know what your plants are, be observant, and your microclimate will have different things to my garden. You'll have different problems in your garden to my garden. Everybody's sun is different. We've all got these little spaces. So just build your relationship with your garden. It's all about that relationship. And the more your relationship with your garden develops, the more you'll become aware of all these other relationships that are going on in your garden.
Any other questions?
There's one at the back.
Right at the back, yeah.
Yes, you.
So Jane, thank you for that. Thank you for your books, particularly this one, because we're thinking of converting it into a textbook. We go national. Because we have a huge nutritional security problem in this country. Your book and your content is what is going to change a whole lot of people's way of operating. For me personally, it becomes a huge thing because it's taken me nearly 50 years, in 2 years' time, it'll be 50 years, that I qualified as a mycologist and a regenerative farmer, or interest in that. So a lot of your stuff is really relevant for that, and for that we're going to have a separate
We are definitely going to talk.
But my question, and then the other one is around Monsanto and Bayer, which are absolute banes of our lives. And dear Bill Gates is the key one who's spreading that in parts of our African soil, so that's an activist side. But a direct question to you, I had an interesting conversation with a vegan chef around GMO soya. And he told me that I'm asking him a stupid question. Is that so? Because he said there is no non-GMO soya in South Africa.
I'm going to hand that question over to Sean right behind you, because Sean will know whether there is non-GMO soy available. Let me introduce you, Sean. Sean is from Living Seeds, the largest heirloom seed company in South Africa. And in fact, Kate, he's another one. He and where's Nicola? She must be. There's Nicola. He and Nicola started their company at the same as Love Books and Jane's Delicious Garden. It was a good year for it. So, Sean, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, everybody. There is non-GMO soy available from a variety of suppliers. I think we supply 4 or 5 varieties. The KZN No-Till Club has a very large proportion of their farmers that actually save their own non-GMO soy, specifically because the non-GMO soy actually has a higher production than the GMO soy. Okay, so it is available, you just need to find it.
On Living Seeds site, you'll find it. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
another
you.
final question, and then she's going to sign books, and you can ask her directly questions.
I'm going to say some
Yeah.
thank yous as well to people. Any more
Okey-doke.
questions?
Thank you. All right, I'm
Okay.
going to bring this to an end because actually we could warble on forever and ever.
I just want to say a few thank yous.
Of course you can.
Yes, I
Yes,
just want to
and
say
you
a
must.
couple of thank yous
Yes.
before we close. So, first of all, I want to thank my publishers. To invest in a book like this in this economic climate shows a great faith, not just in me, but in organic and organic gardening. So a big shout out to them. My publisher, unfortunately, isn't here. She's in London, well, actually just north of London. But thank you to them and the whole team. Sean and Nicola, Living Seeds. These guys have been at the forefront of developing and bringing the methods and many of the things that I mentioned in the book that were only available to commercial farmers, and they've made them available to us. So and their education and their constant quest for knowledge. They are constantly experimenting and discovering new things, and for that, as a gardener, I'm extremely grateful, and as an author, even more so. Claire and Grant. Claire and where's Grant? They're at the back there. There's Grant. From Talborn Organics, organic fertilizer company, family owned. They turned 25 this year, and they have been at the forefront as well of exactly everything that we've been talking about with no-till gardening, feeding the soil, both urban and agriculture. So you guys make a huge difference. Thank you for that. Let It Grow, Cliff Rosen, also for your knowledge and for the foundation installs edible gardens in disadvantaged communities, and they also educate. They're not the kind of people who just go in and install a garden and walk away. They educate people and they make a huge difference. And not only that, the Let It Grow Foundation brought 60 beautiful heirloom tomato seedlings. So everybody who buys a book will get an heirloom tomato seedling that are grown from Sean and Nicola's Living Seeds.
Fantastic.
Diane Duplessis, where's Di? There you are. Di, not only a very dear friend and passionate gardener, she also is the distributor and my website. I wouldn't have managed to keep my online shop going while writing this book if it wasn't for Di. So thank you for that. Linda Galvad, from Sought After Seedlings, also for spreading organic word, not only just for healthy gardening, but for healthy eating, the whole combination. So thank you very much for that. Graham, in the middle at the back there. Graham was very instrumental at the beginning stages of this beautiful cover. He sat with me for a number of sessions up at Breeze Block, where we threw ideas around, and he helped me shape what was to become, in conjunction with Marius Roux, my designer, an incredibly beautiful cover. And most of all, I'd like to thank Keith. He's heard me say it also. He's busy browsing books in the background there. But I want to just thank Keith for giving me the space and the love and the ability to be able to write this book. It's hard living with someone who is just so focused all day, every day, on something else completely. And he really just gave me the space to do that, which was fantastic. And when I finally when the book went in for print at the end of June, I went through about 2 weeks of this postpartum book depression and rattiness and not knowing what to do with myself, and then slowly started emerging and thought, oh, look at my veggie garden. Let me redo it completely, and dived in and started to and I came in the one morning all muddy and happy and going, oh my goodness, my garden. And I said to Keith, it feels like I've got my life back. And he looked at me and said, it feels like I've got my wife back. So thank you for giving up your wife for 2 years. And lastly, I want to say thank you to Jenny for always being so supportive and for loving books and for coming out despite having had a knee op. I just so appreciate having had you here doing this. This is the first launch. I'm going to be doing a whole lot of other publicity, but thank you. Thank you for the book.
I've loved it. Thank you. So it is very, very special. Get your copies signed, because it's lovely to get copies signed. And Christmas is around the corner. And you can give the books away, not your own, of course, but you can give them away as wonderful prezzies that are going to keep people, honestly, I would not take this into the bathroom because you will drop it, because there is just, I mean, a lot of the words I can't even pronounce, but there's some horrible bugs in here. And there is one poor caterpillar covered in the most awful aphids.
No, it's
No,
not.
what is it?
No, it's not. That's covered in parasitic wasp eggs.
Oh, well,
There you go.
It's not nice.
I know
It's
it doesn't
not
look
nice for
nice,
the
but it's little
caterpillar.
it's cocoons. It's cocoons of a parasitic wasp. That's the pest control we want, Jenny.
Oh.
It's good.
Well, I feel sorry for the caterpillar.
I know. It will slowly die
It gets
as the wasps
chowed
get
and
eaten. But,
yes, etc.
but it's better than spraying it with a pesticide.
Yeah, yes. There we go. But listen, thank you so much. You're a lovely audience. I could just look at your faces and look at you clutching your books and things. So please come up and make Jane happy and make Keith happy as well.
Thank you, everybody.